5 driving habits destroying your Mercedes engine without you knowing, flooring it on a cold engine. A mechanic in Florida said something to the staff last year that stuck in their head. He said the number one reason he sees Mercedes turbos come in dead is not a factory defect. It is not bad oil. It is not even high mileage. It is what owners do in the first 2 minutes of every single drive. This is what it takes to start killing a turbo that costs thousands of dollars to replace. Here's what is happening. You start your car in the morning. The engine oil is sitting at the bottom of the oil pan. It is cold and thick, like syrup. None of it has reached the parts that actually need protection yet. Your pistons, bearings, and crankshaft are all dry, and your turbocharger, which is spinning at thousands of revolutions per minute the second you hit the gas, has almost zero oil reaching it. Every modern Mercedes has a turbo now. The C300, the E350, the GLC, and the A-Class. All of them have a turbo that gives you that push when you accelerate, and it depends completely on oil to survive. Without oil, it is just metal grinding on metal at insane speed. So when you back out of your driveway and immediately floor it to merge onto the road, you are letting the turbo to do its hardest work at its most vulnerable moment. The oil has not warmed up enough to flow properly. The metal parts have no cushion between them, and the damage does not show up right away. That is the scary part, and you will not hear anything. You will not feel anything different. The turbo just quietly wears down, morning after morning, until one day it fails completely, and you are staring at a repair bill between $2,000 and $5,000. The fix takes zero effort. Start the car. Wait about 30 seconds, then drive gently and easy for the first 10 to 15 minutes. No hard acceleration, no pushing past 3,000 revolutions per minute. Just smooth, calm driving until the temperature gauge starts climbing. Once the oil is warm and flowing the way it should, and drive however you want. Push it as hard as you like. The engine can take it when everything is up to temperature. It just cannot take it cold. Also, do not sit in your driveway idling for 10 minutes thinking that helps. Modern engines warm up faster when you're actually moving. Idling just wastes fuel and keeps everything cold longer than it needs to be. The best approach is 30 seconds of sitting still, then easy driving for a few minutes. That is the sweet spot. One more thing before we move on. RepairPal says the average Mercedes racks up close to $13,000 in maintenance and repair costs over 10 years. A huge chunk of that comes from turbo failures and premature engine wear. And a lot of that wear starts right here, on cold mornings, with owners who have no idea they are doing anything wrong. But cold starts are only half the turbo problem. What most people do at the end of a drive is just as bad, and almost nobody knows about it. Killing the engine right after hard driving. Picture this. You just drove 40 minutes on the highway. You were cruising fast, maybe passing a few cars, and your turbocharger has been working hard that entire time. It is extremely hot. We are talking temperatures that can reach over 1,000 degrees inside that housing. The oil running through it is the only thing that is keeping it from burning up. You pull into your driveway, turn the key, walk inside. Maybe grab something to eat. You are done for the day. Your turbo is not done though. It is still sitting there scorching hot with no oil moving through it. When you turn off the engine, the oil stops circulating, but your turbo does not cool down immediately. It is still scorching hot with no oil flowing through it. The small amount of oil trapped inside the turbo starts baking from the residual heat. It thickens and turns into sludge. That sludge slowly clogs the tiny oil passages and eats away at the turbo bearings over time. Mechanics call this heat soak, and here is what makes it so dangerous. Unlike a sudden failure where your car breaks down and you go get it fixed, heat soak is invisible. It does its damage in silence over months and years. By the time you notice the turbo is struggling, the bearings are already gone, and the only option left is a full replacement. The fix is almost too simple. After any long highway drive or spirited driving, let the car idle for 2 to 3 minutes before you turn it off. The oil keeps circulating, the turbo cools down gradually, and no damage is done. Some newer Mercedes models handle this automatically with built-in systems that keep oil flowing after shutdown. But most models do not have that feature, which means you have to do it yourself. 2 minutes of patience after every hard drive. That is the difference between a turbo that lasts the life of the car and one that dies years early. Now, those first two habits were both about the turbo. This next one goes after something even more expensive to fix, and we guarantee you are doing it without shifting from reverse to drive while the car is still moving. You back out of a parking spot. The car is still creeping backward. You shift it into drive before you fully stop because it is faster and it feels smooth. Everyone does this thinking it saves half a second, and the car seems to handle it fine. What you cannot see is what is happening inside your transmission every time you do that. There is a part in your automatic transmission called a brake band. Its job is to stop the internal gears from spinning when you switch directions. It is engineered to engage when the vehicle is completely still. When you shift while the car is still rolling, even at a crawl, that brake band has to fight against gears that are actively turning. The amount of force on that one small component is massive. Your car can survive this once or twice without any issues. The problem is that most people do it every day. Every time they drive up the highway and every time they leave a parking lot. Multiply that by years of ownership and that brake band slowly grinds itself down to nothing. When it finally fails, the symptoms start small. A slight delay when shifting, a rough jolt going from park to drive, then the transmission starts slipping between gears. Here is the part that really stings. The brake band itself is a cheap part, maybe $50 to $100 for the component. But in order to get to it, a mechanic has to disassemble the entire transmission piece by piece. That means the labor alone runs into thousands of dollars. A full transmission repair on a Mercedes costs anywhere from $3,000 to over $5,000. All because of a habit you could fix by waiting one extra second before shifting. That is what separates a healthy transmission from one that dies early. The same exact problem applies to shifting into park before the car stops. There is a tiny metal gear called a parking pile that locks everything in place. If you shift it into park while the car is still moving, that little gear absorbs all the momentum of a 4,000-pound vehicle. It was never designed for that. Wear it out enough, and one day your car rolls away even though you put it in park. The solution is 1 second of patience by coming to a full stop and shifting. And if you thought transmission damage was expensive, wait until you hear what happens when people cheap out on something as basic as filling up their gas tank. Running the fuel tank close to empty. Most people think running low on gas is just risky because you might get stranded somewhere. That is actually the least of your problems. What is happening inside the fuel system when that needle drops to empty is way more expensive than a tow truck. The fuel pump sits inside the gas tank, completely submerged in fuel. That fuel is not just there to get burned by the engine. It actually cools the pump while it operates. Think of it like a water pump sitting in a pool. Take the water away and the pump overheats. Same thing with your fuel pump. When the tank drops too low, the pump is no longer surrounded by enough liquid to stay cool. It starts running hot, and an overheated fuel pump wears out dramatically faster than one that stays submerged. But the cooling problem is not even the worst part. Every gas tank collects sediment at the bottom over time. Tiny bits of dirt, rust particles, and debris that settle like sand in a fish tank. When your fuel level is healthy, the pump draws fuel from well above that layer of junk. When you are riding on fumes, the pump starts sucking from the very bottom where all of that contamination sits. That dirty fuel gets pushed through the fuel lines, through the filter, and if the filter cannot catch everything, straight into the fuel injectors and the engine. A single clogged fuel injector on a Mercedes can cost over $1,000 to replace. A fuel pump replacement runs between $500 and $1,200 depending on the model. And if contaminated fuel gets past the filter and reaches the engine itself, you are looking at problems that make those numbers look small. Mercedes recommends keeping the tank at a quarter full or above at all times. When the needle touches a quarter, fill up the tank. Do not wait for the low fuel warning light. Do not play the guessing game with how many miles you think you have left. 5 minutes at a gas station protects parts that cost hundreds or thousands to replace. That is probably the best 5 minutes you will spend all week. All right, so everything up to this point has been about mechanical habits, things you do while driving or parking that wear down specific parts. The last part is different. This part is about ignoring what your car is already trying to tell you. And honestly, this is the one that costs Mercedes owners more money than all the other four combined. Ignoring the check engine light. Because the car feels fine, the check engine light comes on, you drive around for a day and everything feels completely normal. Same power, same sound, and same ride. You figure it is probably just a sensor acting up. Maybe it will go away on its own. You will get to it when you have time. That exact thought process has turned a $300 repair into a $3,000 nightmare repair for thousands of Mercedes owners. And the worst part is, the car felt perfectly fine the entire time the damage was getting worse. The check engine light is connected to the OBD system, which monitors hundreds of sensors across your entire vehicle. When that light turns on, the computer has detected something operating outside of normal conditions. It could be minor, like a loose gas cap, or it could be the early warning of a failing oxygen sensor, a misfiring cylinder, or a catalytic converter starting to break down. The reason this is so dangerous on a Mercedes specifically is because of how deeply integrated the systems are. Everything in these cars is connected to everything else. One small failure that you leave alone does not just stay small, it puts stress on the parts around it. Those parts start working harder to compensate, and then they start failing too. A $300 oxygen sensor you ignore for 6 months can cause your catalytic converter to overheat, which then costs over $3,000 to replace. That is a real scenario that plays out in Mercedes repair shops all the time. 10 times the repair cost because someone waited a few months long. RepairPal gives Mercedes a reliability rating of 3.0 out of 5.0. That places it 27th out of 32 car brands, and there is a 41% chance your Mercedes will need a major repair, meaning over $500 within the first 10 years. The owners who catch issues early and fix them when the light first comes on spend a fraction of what the owners who wait end up paying. You can buy an OBD2 scanner for under $30 and check the error code yourself in your own driveway. Some auto parts stores will scan it for free. Once you know what the code says, you can decide if it is a quick fix or if you need a professional. But do not let that light sit there glowing for weeks hoping it goes away. The problem will not fix itself, and every day you wait, the repair gets more expensive. On a Mercedes, where even small fixes are not cheap, catching something early is the difference between a minor inconvenience and a bill that makes your stomach drop. Remember that mechanic from the beginning of this video? The one who said the turbo killer is what owners do in the first 2 minutes of every drive? He also said something else. He said in 20 years of working on Mercedes cars, the difference between the ones that last and the ones that fall apart early almost never comes down to the car itself. It comes down to the owner. The owners who take care of the small stuff, the cold starts, the cool downs, the fuel level, the warning lights, those are the ones whose cars last 200,000 miles and beyond. The ones who ignore all of it end up in his shop way too early, paying way too much, and wondering what went wrong with the German engineering. The engineering was fine, but the habits were the problem. Now you know exactly what goes wrong, and you know how to stop every single one of them. Outro. Hit the subscribe button so you do not miss the video. We have a lot more helpful tips coming up that will help you save your Mercedes.